It was supposed to be a day of prayer, reflection, and peace. But on this fateful Sunday morning, the congregation of Grace Fellowship Church would witness something so shocking, it would forever change their faith and their community. The man they looked up to, their pastor, their spiritual guide, was gunned down on the altar by someone no one expected, the mother of his child. But why? What was the breaking point? Today, we uncover the shocking truth behind a story of betrayal, lies, and tragedy. Michael Simmons was a man of God, a beloved spiritual leader who seemed to embody the very values he preached. With his magnetic personality and unwavering dedication, he attracted worshippers from miles away. At home, he was the proud husband of Rachel Simmons, his high school sweetheart, and father to 2 children, Sarah, a bright and curious 12-year-old, and Caleb, a playful 9-year-old with a love for soccer. To the outside world, the Simmons family was perfect. Rachel was the epitome of grace, a devoted wife who supported Michael's ministry and raised their children with love and care. Together, they were seen as pillars of the community, an ideal couple who inspired others. But not all families are perfect. Danielle Turner, a 29-year-old newcomer to the town, arrived with a heavy heart and a troubled past. After the collapse of a tumultuous relationship, she sought solace in Grace Fellowship Church, hoping to rebuild her life. Little did she know, her path would cross with Pastor Michael in ways she could never have imagined. Before Danielle Turner arrived at Grace Fellowship Church, her life had been shaped by years of turmoil. Raised in a broken home, she watched her parents' marriage crumble under the weight of infidelity and addiction. These early experiences left her with deep emotional scars, a longing for stability, and a fear of abandonment. Despite her rocky upbringing, Danielle was determined to build a better future. She worked hard in school, earning a scholarship to a local college. But her relationships were often tumultuous, a pattern that repeated itself in adulthood. In her late 20s, Danielle believed she had found love with a man she met in college. But their relationship turned toxic, leaving her emotionally shattered. Seeking solace, she left the city and moved to the small town where Grace Fellowship Church offered her a glimmer of hope. To Danielle, Grace Fellowship wasn't just a church, it was a chance to start over. But what began as a search for healing would lead her down a dark and tragic path. Danielle was immediately drawn to Michael Simmons. His charisma, his passion for his faith, and his ability to connect with people made him a figure of admiration. To her, he seemed like the kind of man who could offer guidance, compassion, and understanding, all the things she had been missing in her life. When Danielle sought counseling from Michael, it felt like a lifeline. She confided in him about her past, her heartbreak, and her fears for the future. Michael listened with empathy, offering words of encouragement that made her feel seen and valued. Michael and Danielle talking late into the evening, the line between counselor and confidant blurring. A moment of silence lingers before they share a hesitant, forbidden kiss. What began as emotional support soon became something deeper, and far more dangerous. Their meetings became more frequent, more intimate. For Danielle, it was the love she had always craved. For Michael, it was an escape from the pressures of his life as a pastor and family man. Danielle began to see Michael as her future. She envisioned a life where he would leave his wife, marry her, and raise their child together. But as her love deepened, so did her expectations, and her impatience. Michael, on the other hand, was plagued by guilt. He knew his actions were a betrayal of his family and his faith, yet he couldn't bring himself to end the affair. Instead, he began to pull away, avoiding Danielle's calls and texts, hoping to quietly sever ties without facing the consequences. The affair between Danielle and Michael was not a sudden blaze but a slow-burning fire that eventually consumed them both. For months, they met in secret, each encounter fueling the illusion that they could keep their double lives intact. But the consequences of their actions would come to light in the most irreversible way. Danielle discovered she was pregnant. Danielle's initial reaction was a mix of fear and excitement. To her, the pregnancy felt like a sign, proof that her relationship with Michael was meant to be. She envisioned this as the moment Michael would finally leave his wife and commit to building a life with her. But Michael's reaction was far from what Danielle had hoped for. Instead of joy or reassurance, she was met with hesitation and fear. For Michael, this wasn't a miracle, it was a crisis. Michael was a man who had built his life on an image of integrity, morality, and faith. The revelation of an affair, let alone a child out of wedlock, threatened to shatter not just his marriage but his entire standing in the community. Michael begged Danielle to keep the pregnancy a secret, offering her money in vague promises of support. But his words were hollow, and his actions revealed a man more concerned with preserving his reputation than facing the consequences of his choices. At first, Danielle clung to the hope that Michael would eventually come around. She imagined him leaving Rachel and embracing their child as part of his life. But as months passed, his visits became less frequent, his promises more fleeting. She began to realize that she and her unborn child were not part of his future, they were a problem he wanted to erase. For Danielle, the pregnancy that once felt like a blessing became a symbol of rejection. She was carrying Michael's child, yet she had never felt more alone. Danielle's life as a single mother was far from the dream she had envisioned. Michael's financial support was sporadic at best, and his emotional support was non-existent. Feeling abandoned and betrayed, Danielle's anger began to fester. "Danielle, you can't ignore me forever, Michael. Michael, stop threatening me." Her texts to Michael became increasingly erratic, vacillating between pleas for help and thinly veiled threats. Michael, desperate to protect his image, deleted her messages and continued to act as though nothing was wrong. But the facade couldn't hold forever. Rachel began to notice Michael's odd behavior, the late-night phone calls, the unexplained absences, and the tension that seemed to hang over him like a shadow. The congregation sings hymns, and Michael begins his sermon. Danielle enters the church, holding their 2-year-old son in her arms. Witnesses later describe her as calm but determined. She walks down the aisle, interrupting Michael mid-sermon. The church falls silent as she places the child on a pew and confronts Michael. She shouts, "Tell them the truth, Michael. Tell them who you really are." Michael tries to defuse the situation, asking Danielle to leave, but she refuses. In a fit of rage, she pulls a handgun from her purse. The congregation gasps, and some try to intervene, but it's too late. Danielle fires 2 shots, hitting Michael in the chest. He collapses on the altar, blood pooling beneath him. Chaos erupts as people scream and rush for the exits. Rachel, frozen in shock, watches as her husband takes his final breaths. Danielle stands motionless for a moment before placing the gun on the altar and surrendering to the police, who arrive moments later. Danielle is arrested at the scene, her face emotionless as she's led away in handcuffs. The media descends on the small town, dubbing the case, "The Altar Betrayal." During her trial, Danielle is arrested at the scene, her face emotionless as she's led away in handcuffs. The media descends on the small town, dubbing the case, "The Altar Betrayal." During her trial, Danielle's defense team argues that years of emotional abuse and abandonment led her to a breaking point. They paint Michael as a manipulative man who used his position of power to exploit Danielle. The prosecution, however, emphasizes the premeditated nature of the crime, pointing to Danielle's purchase of the gun and her public threats. Rachel takes the stand, delivering a tearful testimony about the betrayal she endured and the pain of losing her husband. The congregation is divided, with some blaming Michael for his actions and others condemning Danielle for her violent response. In the end, Daniela is found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to 25 years in prison. As she's led out of the courtroom, she whispers, "He left me no choice." What drives someone to commit such a desperate act? Was Danielle a victim of manipulation, or was she simply unable to control her anger? And how does a community heal when their faith is shaken by the very people they trust most? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more true crime stories.